For another take on the U.S. consumer, we welcome back with us Silvio Tavares, CEO of VantageScore. It's a joint venture of Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. What they do is they provide credit data, credit risk modeling, and analytics. He joins us from San Francisco. Silvio, how are you?
Great to see you, Tim. Great to see you, Carol. Great to be on again.
Hey, how would you describe the consumer right now?
Well, the consumer has become cautious, and that's a market change in the most recent insights that we have for VantageScore CreditGauge that we published this morning. The reality is delinquencies are up significantly, and also credit utilization is down. So consumers, if you look at the percentage of their available credit lines that they're using, that's at a 4-year low, dropped to 51.6% for the most recent period. And then if you look at it from the perspective of banks have also become cautious. They reduced their new credit accounts in the most recent period of July across every single credit category: auto loans, personal loans, credit cards. And so the reality is that sets the stage for a Fed rate cut, because exactly what the Fed wanted to happen, a cooling in the economy, we see that perfectly crystal clear in the latest insights that we have.
Is this all manageable, or does it send to you some warning signs about the consumer really heading into some trouble?
Well, for sure, these are warning signs, particularly what we saw in July, which is really right across the board. If you look at credit utilization, that's at a 4-year low. The spike that we saw in late payments, what we call credit delinquencies, the spike June to July in credit delinquencies was the largest we've seen in 4 years. So the consumer is flashing some warning signs heading into September. And that's exactly why the Fed, as recently as yesterday and on Friday in Chairman Powell's speech, they're signaling they're gonna cut rates. And when we look back on this, what we're gonna say is this was the right time to do it.
So do you think that we'll see, or you in your world will see, an immediate reaction as a result of lower rates when it comes to the metrics that you look at, Silvio?
Yes, immediate is, depending on the time horizon you look at, but for sure there will be an impact this year. The challenge that the Fed has is not whether to decide whether to cut rates or not. They pretty much said they're going to cut in September. The question now is how much. If it's too much, they risk reigniting inflation. If it's too little, then of course that potentially means the economy will decelerate further, and the economy could slide into recession. And so it's a real challenge to get that exactly right, particularly in the context where consumers actually right now are cautious, but as they look out over the next 6 to 12 months, consumer confidence is quite high. We saw that in the data. Also, consumer credit health overall is actually still pretty good. The average VantageScore credit score, 300 is low, 850 is high. Through the end of July, it was 702. So consumers are actually credit healthy, and they have the ability to take on more debt. So I think it's going to come out that the Fed is probably going to cut by a 1/4 point, and then see what happens, and then wait till later on in the year to see if they need to do more.
Two things. I am curious because it sounds like a mixed bag of data that I'm hearing from you, or mixed tones in terms of, credit utilization, as you said, fell to a new 4-year low, credit delinquency spiking in July, highest month over month, jump in more than 4 years. Couple things. So is there a net takeaway about what it says about the consumer? Because it sounded like earlier you said that there are some worries and some concerns here, warning signs, I think you said in July. But I feel like there's also some things that aren't so bad. So I'm not quite sure what the takeaway is. And who are these consumers? This this latest survey, that you guys do, the CreditGauge data, is it a cross-section of consumers? Can you give me some idea in terms of the demographics of who actually are in these surveys?
Right. And so these are not surveys. These are actual consumers'
Right.
credit score, and it's across all Americans that have a credit report. So it's the most comprehensive data set that we have about credit health.
So Tim, me, everybody in my control room, we're all in there.
You're all in there. We're all in there. And in fact, we score approximately 30 million more Americans than our next competitor. And so the signs, and this is what changed in July, the signs for the first time are actually consistent across the board. Credit utilization and the low number there shows that consumers are cautious and they think taking on additional loans is too expensive right now. So that shows the economy is slowing. When you look at delinquencies increasing, the most we've seen in 4 years, that's another sign that the consumer is cautious but actually hurting. It's a sign that the employment picture is deteriorating. And third data point, when you see banks reducing their lending, banks are obviously in the business of lending. When they reduce that, that means that banks are also cautious and concerned about the risk ahead. So all three warning signs shows very clearly the economy is slowing down, consumers are ratcheting back, and that's exactly what the Fed intended. That's why they kept rates as high as they did. And now it's time to take the foot off the brake and let the economy grow again. And that's what we're going to be doing in September.
Hey, Silvio, we are all eyes on AI because of NVIDIA earnings tomorrow after the bell. I'm wondering
on AI, is that what you said?
AI.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How are you using AI at VantageScore when it comes to consumer credit and determining credit scores?
Yeah, and so this is one of the areas that, there's been not sufficient focus on. The reality is VantageScore and credit scores are inherently an AI product. We use advanced machine learning to look at a consumer's credit report over time. We call that trended data, and we have an algorithm that spits out a 3-digit number. If it's low, you're not very credit worthy. If it's high, VantageScore 850, you are very credit worthy. And so it is the use of AI. But we do one thing which is very, very important. We always look at our algorithms and make sure that they are producing fair and equitable outcomes. And to do that, we include all of the best data. So we were, in fact, the first credit score to include rental data. Believe it or not, before us, nobody used rental data in the credit score calculation. We're also recently the newest score to actually use open bank account data, open banking data. We're the first to use that. And that enables us to have a really good read on how consumers are going to pay back their loans, and also including the maximum number of consumers to pay have a credit score.
I do worry, though, if consumers are feeling a little squeezed and a little warning sign that if the Fed lowers rates, do people kind of start to ease up again and spend again because rates go down? I just wonder if that potentially creates some consumer problems going forward, which means we will have to check in with you again, Silvio. Good to check in. This time, Silvio Tavares, he's Chief Executive Officer of VantageScore, joining us from San Francisco.